I'm a matchy-matchy kind of gal, and that means matching the cover of my journal to the first theme inside it. Today we're setting up my new bullet journal for the beginning of 2025, including all of the wonderful new journal tracker stuff that gets to happen at the beginning of a new year, and is always one of my favourite things to set up. Hopefully, I'll send you off with some inspiration for your own journal setup for 2025 as well. Hello, my name's Erin, thank you for clicking on my video. Allow me to introduce you to my journal for the first half of 2025. This is the Song Brocade A5 journal from PHOMEMO. It comes in some other colours as well, but blue is my favourite colour, so of course I gravitated toward this one. And I'm going to be pulling the colours from the cover here, the blue, the yellow, the peachy pink, and using those as the basis for my theme. This is a dot grid journal, which is my very favourite, and it also has page numbers, which I haven't had in a bullet journal in many years, so I'm excited to bring back an index. I'm skipping over the nameplate page and the awkward first glued pages for now. We'll come back to those at another time, maybe in a live stream. And this is where I'm going to set up my index, but we're not going to start with that actually. We're going to turn one more page and start with the cover spread. Big shout out to Beck from Sassy Pigeon HQ who made this beautiful 2022 cover spread. I am completely using her idea here. I jumped on Canva and found a slab serif font that I really like the look of. The one I chose is called Fabrica, and I've printed out a nice big bold 2025 on my clear paper with the PHOMEMO MO2 mini printer. Twice actually, because the first time I printed it a little bit too small. Then I'm just finding the center of the page, and I'm going to use that as the basis for where I place these numbers. This clear paper from PHOMEMO is also sticky, and I was planning to just use this as a template, cut out the numbers and then peel this back up, but that didn't go so nicely, unfortunately, with this paper in this journal. I probably could have stuck it to some fabric first to take down the stickiness, but I didn't think of that. But what kind of setup would it be if I didn't face a little challenge somewhere along the way? I'm using a craft knife to cut out the larger bold sections of these numbers, leaving those smaller fine lines intact so that we can reveal the page that's underneath. And of course, I've popped a cutting mat behind the page so that I'm not ruining the journal underneath. I have one of those gyro cutter tools. I got it recently, but I haven't quite got the hang of it yet, and I don't like how long that's taking me to use, so I'm just going to use the typical craft knife. They're also not the cleanest cuts ever. There are some rough edges going on here, but the overall effect is still giving me the look that I want, so I'm just not going to worry too much about it. Once I had the 2 and the 0 cut out on the top row, I tried to take off the sticker paper and it was ripping the paper underneath, so I decided that wasn't such a good idea, and I ended up just removing the parts that I'd tried to lift because they were sitting up and not sticking to the page anymore. And we're going to find a different way to make this pretty, because right now it's not looking super pretty. Also, as always, if there is anything I'm using in this video that you like the look of, there will be a link to it in the description so you can get your hands on anything that catches your eye. Now, when Beck did this, she used a floral postcard behind her design. I'm going to be using this PET tape instead, which means I need to piece together my little floral pattern behind this so that I'm making sure that the entire space that's revealed by these cutout numbers is covered with flowers. To make sure I don't miss anywhere, I'm going over those cutout shapes with a pencil so that I can make sure I'm covering all of those areas, but I don't want the pencil to be visible through the tape either, so I'm just going to erase most of these pencil lines, but just leave enough that I can still see where they're supposed to go. This is the Ethereal Petals PET tape from the Washi tape shop. I've actually used it before in my June reading journal spreads for 2024. And it's just such a fantastic match to the journal cover, but you do have to go around and cut out all of the designs yourself with scissors. These ones aren't a pre-cut PET tape. Also, right now on the website, the PET tape and the PET and washi bundle are both sold out, but you can still get it as a washi tape. I don't know if they'll be restocked or if it's just because of Black Friday sales, things are low in stock, but just something to keep in mind if you like the look of this one. I'm really happy with how the flowers are showing through the gaps, but I'm not happy with my weird clear tape situation on the front here, so I'm going to cover it with some blue origami paper. I got this paper from Daiso, and that is one of my favorite places to get journaling supplies. I particularly love origami paper in my journal because it's very thin because you're supposed to be able to fold it easily, and that means it doesn't bulk up your pages too much, which is great because this journal has a lot of pages. In fact, it has 190 pages, and I'm hoping to use up almost all of them. I personally love a torn edge on my paper in my journal. I think it looks very romantic. I just made sure to check how tall I needed it to be before I tore anything so I can make sure it still fully covers these numbers that we've cut out. And I just ran out of glue tape, which is unfortunate. I feel like I've really been going through it lately. The one I'm using in this video is not the one I've linked you to in the description. The one I've linked you to is my favorite, and it seems to last me a lot longer than the ones I've been using lately. I was pretty generous with how much glue tape I put on the back of this piece because I want it to stick around all of those areas that we cut out. And now from the other side, I'm going to cut those same areas out on the blue paper. This stuff doesn't cut so easily with the craft knife, unfortunately. It kind of frays a little bit. Actually, now that I'm thinking about it, I probably just need to replace the blade. I've been using this one for a long time. There's a good chance it's just a little bit blunt now. But I tell you what, sometimes something going wrong can actually result in something even better than what you planned. This blue paper over the top of the numbers was absolutely a damage control tactic, but I love how it looks so much. I'm just jumping in with a silver paint marker from my set of metallic paint markers from ArtX and going over the corners around the edges because of that slightly fuzzy kind of feeling that we've got going on now. And I'm also using it to connect up the bits where we've cut the numbers out, but they don't quite meet, they don't touch, they don't join. And having my accidental first too small print was really helpful for this because I could use it as a reference. I'm so happy with how that's looking, so let's move on to the left page now. I figured since we have that blue kind of spilling onto the page, maybe we should just continue it across over to the left page as well, so I'm tearing that one up to match. And just being careful when I place it on the page that it connects with the one on the other side, so it gives the impression of one long river of blue rather than two separate pieces of paper. I'm going to add a quote to the left side, but I wanted it to tie in some of that kind of peachy coral color as well, so I'm using this is actually an envelope from a writing set that I've had for a while. I'll cut it down so that it fits beautifully on the page, but first let's add the lettering in case I mess it up. This quote is from Ken Poirot, and it reads, "Today is your opportunity to build the tomorrow you want." As a serial procrastinator, I really wanted something that was going to help remind me to seize the moment throughout 2025, and I thought this would be a good one for that. I'm using one of the A&O Calligraphs for this and for all the rest of my lettering throughout this setup. It's kind of a corally pink color. This one is from before they started giving them color names. I don't have that many calligraphs. The ones I do have I got in their subscription boxes from 2023, so I never know what they're called, but I really like the smaller end on them. It's really nice for lettering. They have a larger brush tip on the other end too, but I really like that they're both brushed ends and that you get a small one that's good for small spaces and a larger one that's good for highlighting every second line or whatever else you like to do with your larger brush pens. I had gone in with pencil first, but I didn't make myself any size of writing guidelines, so they've gotten a little bit smaller as I've moved down the piece of paper, but that's okay. It honestly doesn't bother me that much. I'm just opening up the envelope so I can cut things down to size with my handy little slidey paper cutter tool that I use all the time, and then we can stick this down in its new home. I'm planning to leave this here for now. I'm going to add some extra stuff to this spread that's currently just some flowers sitting behind the numbers, not really serving any other purpose. It's still not going to serve any other purpose, but I will make it look a little bit more intentional. But we're going to come back to the cover spread later because I haven't totally decided how I'm going to incorporate other things later on. I definitely wanted this theme to feel a little bit more minimal than I have been doing in other situations lately. I knew I probably would come back and add some more of the Ethereal Petals PET tape to the front of the 2025 page. But as I mentioned, I've used that tape before and I wasn't totally sure how much I had left. I wanted to make sure it would get me through the whole theme first and then use up anything that was left over towards the end. And I have another entire roll of PET tape that I haven't started using yet that I will incorporate later in this theme, and I hadn't worked out how the two would go together yet, so I thought we'll just hold off on that for now. So at this early stage I decided less is more and I could work it out later as I went. This is where we're leaving the cover spread for now, and I think it looks really cute just exactly as it is. You could leave it here by all means. I will come back and add a little bit more embellishment, but for now, let's move on to the first of our functional spreads, which is the future log. This one can also be called a year at a glance or just a calendar. I like to have lots of space for planning for the 6 months that I'm going to be using this journal, and then I also like to have the next half of the year put down somewhere so I can put any long-term plans in there without them needing quite as much space as the months I'm actually going to be using this journal for. So to solve my problem here, I'm going to be setting up 2 full spreads. The first spread will have the first 4 months of the year, the second spread will have the next 2 months to get us to June, and then the extra page at the end there is going to have the rest of the year. To make my life a little bit easier and save me from having to decorate things twice, I've removed part of the right page at the top there so that it will reveal this kind of header decoration area. This is called a Dutch door anytime you remove part of the page to reveal the page that's underneath it. I don't know if we would necessarily call the numbers on the original cover spread back there a Dutch door, because it isn't kind of just a chunk of the page missing, but I feel like you get the idea, right? I think the name for this comes from the kind of Dutch door that is an actual door into a dwelling that you can open the top and the bottom of independently, so that makes a lot of sense. I think that's also called a stable door in some parts of the world. It can be a bit intimidating to cut into your journal, and I know it's not an idea that appeals to everyone, but if it means I only need to do my decoration at the top of this spread once, I am all about it. I love efficiency. Also, did you catch my mistake there on February where I put the third in a column that it shouldn't exist in? I forgot to fix that. I still haven't, but I promise you I will. You know I love my light colored markers highlighting every second line, so I'm doing that of course on my calendar spread. I'm using the Tombow Ice Blue 491 and the 873 Coral, and if you like the look of this setup and you want to try it yourself, here's the grid spacing so you can copy it exactly. This is for an A5 journal, by the way, which is the most common journal size. If you're using a different size journal, you might need to adapt this layout to fit. Now on the back of that Dutch door, I'm just doing the exact same thing for May and June. 2025 is going to be my 8th year bullet journaling, and this part used to really intimidate me, writing out all of the numbers. It used to be something that made my hand really hurt. I think I have really trained myself up now because it doesn't even faze me anymore. It's amazing. On the right page, I'm going to add the same tiny calendars for the next half of the year, but I'm going to leave a lot less space around them for adding my dates in there because there's not going to be as much stuff to keep track of for the second half of the year. Anything that I do need to keep track of can go here, and then I'll transfer it into my next journal when we get to like May or June. The second half of the year is usually really busy, but I don't often have that stuff booked in 6 months to a year in advance anymore. I used to, but not so much anymore. So as long as there's room for me to note down a few things for the second half of the year for each month, I'm good. I'm also being careful to make sure that those months are below the line of the Dutch door, so that when the Dutch door is flipped to the right, it'll hide all of those calendars and we'll still just have the pretty little floral header that we haven't done yet on display. I will have a grid spacing guide for that right page that's underneath the Dutch door in case you're interested, and I'll show you that a little bit later on, but for now, let's decorate the top of this spread and make it pretty. I'm using some of the offcuts from the cover spread to add a little bit of blue at the top of the page here, and lately I've been trying to make sure that I cut the corners with my little corner cutting tool before I stick things to the page, but this origami paper is a little bit too fragile for that. It kind of just folds instead, so I have to do it by hand. That's okay. Originally, I was planning to lay down this whole strip of PET tape in one go along the top here, but I didn't line it up quite right, so I'm having to get in there with my scissors on the fly while peeling off the backing and remove some of the tape so I can lay it down a bit differently, otherwise it's going to cover my calendars. Better to line things up before you start, I think. And actually, if you've been following along with the channel recently, you might know that I recently had these scissors confiscated in Singapore at airport security when I was on my way home from a trip to the UK. They're home, they're back, they're not the same scissors, I just bought them again. I really missed them. I've also left a bit of space at the bottom of these calendars so I can add a little decoration down the bottom of this spread as well. And that's one of my favorite ways to decorate a spread, is to make this kind of sandwich, so they'll be pretty at the top and bottom and functional in the middle, or pretty on the left and right and functional again in the middle. I absolutely love my solid pastel washi tape sets. I go through them, especially for the mystery journal, which is the journal that I give away, but they come in really handy for things like this too. I really like to use a strip of solid coloured washi tape as kind of an anchor, and then layer stickers over the top of it. The sticker roll I'm using here is the pre-cut PET tape called Mediterranean Breeze from the Washi Tape Shop, and it is the perfect fit for the beginning of a new year in the Southern Hemisphere, like where I am in Australia, because it has all these beautiful summery themes, and it is of course summer for us when January hits, so that just seems too perfect. This particular sticker set has citrus themes with oranges and lemons, it has peaches, it has cocktail glasses, which is very sweet. I'm not much of a drinker, so we'll just pretend they're for mocktails instead. And here's the grid spacing for that single page 6-month calendar in case you want to bring that into your own journal. Let's move on to a pretty important page. I set this one up for 2024 and then never actually used it, which is a little embarrassing. This one's going to be a goals page, and goal setting is something I'm usually pretty on top of, but I think I was just not feeling it for 2024. I kind of thought about it, I had some ideas, and then I never set those goals. I'm feeling ready to set some for 2025 though, so I'm going to include the page despite it not being used for last year's journal. But I'm doing it in a way that's very open. I'm not kind of giving myself goal categories or anything, just lots of space to write. I can make some long form text about it if I want to, or I can just make some little dot points. I can do a couple of things, or I can fill the page. We'll see. I'm also trying to mix together those Mediterranean Breeze elements with the flowers from the Ethereal Petal set so that those look like they go together, because on the previous page I kind of had them quite separate. The top was one and the bottom was the other. I want to try and really blend the two. The right page here is a new one for me. I'm setting up a page that's just dedicated to working out my ideal weekly and daily routines. I've been self-employed for about 12 or 13 years now, and I've always worked really well without structure, but I'm starting to crave it. I don't know if that's because of the time of my life that I'm reaching. I'm 37 years old and maybe I just need some structure finally. But I thought it would be good to work out what I want to get out of a week and build myself some routines so that I have some things to fall back on, especially when things get a little bit hectic, because I find that I don't have any ways to cope with it when it does get hectic, and it would be nice to have some fail-safes in place. So this spread is divided into 2 columns. On the left side I'm going to have my weekly routine with a couple of notes of things that I will do on specific days each week, and on the right side I have the daily, so a bit more of a self-care approach to the routine, like things that I want to do in the morning and the evening, most likely, every day. Here's the grid spacing for this one in case you're interested. I'm not giving you grid spacing for the goal page because I don't really think you need it. It's kind of just some decoration and some lines in between. I did forget to put the initial for each day of the week on my routines though over on the weekly side, so let's just quickly add that before we go back to the next spread that we started on almost for a second there. I fully expect this routine thing to evolve, so it might be something I need to include month to month as I work out what works for me, but it's an interesting idea and I'm excited to see how it goes. The page we've moved on to, however, is a different one. I'm setting this up in the style of a year in pixels, or 6 months in pixels rather, but this is going to be a skincare tracker, which is something I used to include in my journal years ago and haven't done in quite some time. I'm a bit of a skincare girly. I don't like to try new products too much because I have pretty sensitive skin and I have some prescription products for rosacea and stuff that I need to use, but I do have a bunch of stuff that I like to use kind of on a cycle, and I do find that I'm less consistent with it maybe than I could be, so I figure having a little skincare tracker year in pixels will help me keep track of how often I'm using the retinol, how often I'm using the rosacea stuff, how often I'm using my BHA, and then I can keep track of it and make sure I'm also giving my skin a break because it can't handle all of that stuff all the time. And the right page here is an old chestnut of a tracker that I have in every one of my journals because it's useful for me. It's a social media tracker, and that may not be useful for you, and that's okay if it isn't, but there's probably some way that you could approach this page that you could adapt to work for you that's for something else. What's the thing that you're working on? What's the thing that you're trying to improve? And is there a quantifiable way to keep track of that, where you maybe write down a number once a month? Then this could work for that. This could be a really good way to track whatever that is. And just in case you do want to track whatever that is, here's the grid spacing so that you can have this in your journal too. I've split mine into a top and a bottom tracker. The top one is for my own stuff, my YouTube channel, my Instagram, a couple of spare spaces baked in case I decide to start a mailing list or something this year. And below that is a little tracker for my dance groups, because I run social media for the 2 dance groups that I'm part of. And I'm not like hugely trying to grow those, but I do like to just keep an eye on how it's ticking along. Of course, now we can decorate, and I'm busting out this lovely London Gifties washi tape that I also used in my reading journal when I did this colour scheme. It's beautiful and I have so much of it, which is fantastic. But I don't think you can get it on their site anymore. In fact, I don't even think I picked it. I think it came as a freebie with my order and then has ended up being my most used thing from that order, which is kind of wild. I've stacked it up with a little bit of blue washi tape, and again I'm just using those as an anchor, as a place that I kind of attach my stickers to. You can see I'm starting to get lazy with my lettering and rush it, and then I don't get as clean and up and down, and the shapes of the letters are not as good. But at this point, I'd been journaling for a couple hours and I was just about ready to be moving a little faster. So unfortunately, when that happens, that's when I start to make less nice lettering choices, and I start to make mistakes as well, as we'll see coming soon. The one we're working on now is my content planner, which is very useful for YouTube things. Currently I post twice a week, so I'm setting up the content planner in such a way that I have space to do my sort of Tuesday, Wednesday video and my Friday video. And I was trying to alternate colours, and then on the right page I drew my blue lines again where it was supposed to be peachy lines. And in a second, on the left page when I'm doing the peachy lines, I'm going to put them in completely the wrong place, and that's always fun. So I think I was just starting to hit that point where I needed a little break, but when you've got a YouTube deadline, you got to get the video out, you don't take the little break. So I probably should have just had a cup of tea and looked at something else for a while, but it's okay, we can fix it. On the right side, where I was supposed to be alternating colours on each side and then forgot, I'm just going to commit and have a peachy side for the Tuesday, Wednesday video and a blue side for the Friday video. And in fact, maybe that makes more sense anyway than the alternating thing that just kind of looks cute. And in the case of the January section there where there's too much peach going on, I'm just going to use a white correction tape roller and just roll over the line that was supposed to be white. It's going to be super obvious, but it's still going to function as a spread, and so sometimes you just have to live with your mistakes, and this is one of those cases for me. I'm also going through and doing tiny calendars on each one of these months again, which is going to take a long time and maybe isn't completely necessary, but I do find it just helps me to have that visual prompt so I don't have to flip back through other pages and things to work out where I'm posting videos. Once again, this doesn't have to be a content planner. Here's the grid spacing in case you like the idea of it for content or for something else. You can use this for assignments for 2 different subjects at university or at school. Don't you hate that when you're erasing and you completely crease up the page? It drives me nuts. Rather than some kind of a project management tool, this could actually just be a different way to set up a future log if you like the idea of horizontal things better. It could just be a really cute way to track your friends' birthdays if you wanted to. I'm actually forever moving videos around in my content planner, so this one ends up really messy by the end of the 6-month period, but it's really helpful to help me plan things out, so I have to keep bringing it back, even if I know I'm going to trash it in the end anyway. And actually knowing this one will probably end up pretty messy is helping me cope with those mistakes too, because if it was something that would end up pristine at the end of the 6-month period of this journal, maybe I'd be a little more mad about it, but I know it's going to be a mess, so it's fine. I don't love correction tape, to be honest, but for a large mistake like this one, it is kind of my go-to. So you can see there, it's like done the job, but it's obvious. It'll do. It's fine. Let's move on. These 2 are the furthest we're going into the journal in this video, so after this will be where my January spreads start, but we've got 2 more trackers to do here. The first one on the left page, I've included something similar in the mystery journal that I borrowed Jess's title, Jashi Corinne's title for, which was Future Me Problems. I think in my own journal, I'm less keen on that title. I'm just going to call it Future Projects for anything I want to get around to, but I just kind of haven't yet. I've been putting it off, or it's not enough of a priority to have done it already. Like, for instance, replacing the handles on my desk drawers, which I bought beautiful brass handles for like 2 years ago. I think I replaced 3 of them, and the rest are still waiting, out of 8 drawers, so I got some work to do there. And on the right page, I'm including something that I've had in my previous 2 journals that I really liked the idea of. I didn't always use, but I liked having it there in case I did want to use it, and that is a monthly reset spread. So this is a list of tasks that I want to make sure I'm doing every month, whether that's all in one go at the beginning or end of a month, or if it's just kind of things that are sprinkled throughout. Either way is fine. Things like cleaning out my car, cleaning out my fridge, cleaning up my office, decluttering my stationery, because Lord knows that's something I need to do a lot. I really thought when I first set this up it was going to turn me into someone who would do all of these things in the last week of every month, and clearly that didn't happen, but I do like having the option, having the prompts of like what were those things that I wanted to make sure I was doing. I can check the list and see how recently I did it without having to set up one of those when did I last spreads, because I tried that once and it was a big failure for me. And also sometimes my partner does the things on the monthly reset list and they've still been done, so I can still cross them off even if I wasn't the one who executed the thing, you know? I'm definitely moving more towards a mindset of these spreads are here for me if I want them, rather than, oh no, I didn't fill out the thing, now I feel bad, because this journal is supposed to be here to help me, right? Not to make me feel bad, so I'm not gonna let it. With those two spreads done, we've got all of these pages left over for future things, but for now let's go back to the cover spread, and I've got a pretty good idea of how much stuff I have to work with and how I've been using these things with each other throughout the rest of the theme, which means I can go into this cover spread and decorate it with some little cocktail glasses and some of our pretty PET tape, and make sure that it feels cohesive with the rest of the setup. I'm also going to go back one more spread and set up my index, which is just not a very exciting place to start. I usually do it last because it's just not the most fun part to jump into. I always want to get to that cover spread. Honestly, there's a good chance I may never use the index, but when a journal has numbered pages like this, which I feel is kind of rare, I feel like it would sort of almost be rude not to use it, so I'm setting up my index. In fact, I'm going to set up essentially two on a single page like this. So on the left we have a larger column and then a little column, a larger column and then a little column moving towards the right. It's just the same thing twice. Here's the grid spacing in case you like it, but it's a column for the topic and then a column for the page number and then just that again. It's so satisfying to have come up with a theme that matches the journal really nicely, matches the way the cover looks, you know. I'm curious about if that's something that you also like to do in your journal, or do you not really take the cover into account when you're setting up your first theme? I'm really curious. It's not something I really took into account until the beginning of last year. I had a red journal and I did kind of a red theme to match that, and I really liked it, so it's something that I've been taking forward since then. Also, what time of year do you tend to set up your new journal? For me, it's usually closer to October, but I'm just running a bit late this year, I guess. I went on holidays. Here is the flip through of this completed setup. And despite its mistakes, I am really happy with it. It's quite different to what I've been doing lately. I've definitely been in a bit of a fantasy whirlpool, and this one doesn't fall into that so much, but I really like the fresh and summery vibes. And I know I'm going full fantasy in my reading journal, although I haven't set that one up yet, so don't worry, there will be fantasy coming soon. At the time I'm publishing this video, there's still time to enter the giveaway for both the mystery journal, bullet journal, and also for the reading journal giveaway that I'm doing. But both are closing pretty soon, so you'll want to be quick. I will make sure those videos are linked in the description so you can find them. If this color scheme isn't quite your jam, or you're looking for some layouts that are maybe a little more universal or suited to someone who works a normal job rather than a self-employment situation like me, here's a link to the new journal setup in the mystery journal, which is a journal that I designed for someone else and then give away, as well as last year's setup in my own bullet journal, which was a vintage storybook theme with gouache paint, and there's a subscribe link there too in case you want to stick around.